Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
I've been looking forward to this interview all week since it landed on my desk because everybody's got a Terry Venables story. I got two, but let's one in London and one in Barcelona. But there is a brilliant book out called If I Can Dream. It's by Tim Rich. I'm delighted to say on the day of the World Cup. What better time to speak? Tim, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good indeed, Giles. I'm in Manchester at the moment, where it is gloomy. All the lights are on. It's, I can absolutely see why Spain is so attractive.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, however, it is cloudy today, so but I think it's pretty quite sunny in Barcelona, and obviously El Tel, as he was known in this part of the world. I mean, he was a man who made an impression on Spanish football. Why? I mean, apart from the fact he was a brilliant guy, why are you writing this? Why did you feel the need to write this book, If I Can Dream?
Well, the thing is, Giles, Terry Venables, as you know and I know, was one of the most interesting men, certainly ever, to manage England, and certainly one of the most interesting men ever to manage top-flight football. He was a guy who, he released records, he wrote novels. He was a great tactician. He sang with the Joe Loss Orchestra. And in between all that, he managed Barcelona to their first La Liga title in 11 years. He then managed England with an ace of glory. And also, he was from Dagenham. And my grandfather worked in the Ford factory at Dagenham. And so I always kind of resonated a little bit with me. And so with the anniversary of Euro 96 upon us, absolutely upon us.
Of course.
It's 30 years. And I thought this must be a great opportunity to go and talk to some of the people who knew Terry, some of the people who were really influenced by him, and just tell some of the great stories that made him the guy he was.
Because if you think about it, it was 96. It's Britpop at its highest. It's Oasis against Blur. Yeah, we got Tony Blair in government. It's Cool Britannia. There was nobody better. Because if you think about how football was kind of regarded pretty much before Euro 96, it was football hooliganism. You wouldn't go there. And Euro 96 was a turning point, wasn't it? I mean, we were all having a fantastic laugh, and England, it was. I remember I was in London at the time. The matches were going on, and it was just an absolutely. Everybody knows where they were when Gascoigne was that close. Everybody was there. And everybody was, and there was no better embodiment, rather than having a sort of stuffed shirt or a Sven. Yeah. There was Tell, and he was. You would have sat with him and had a pint, which some people, and had a laugh and had a sing song with him, because he was that kind of guy, and we could relate to him.
He wasn't a pints man. He liked good wine, and he liked champagne. It was an amazing, astonishing time. And it was the time when football exploded in this country. Tony Blair hadn't yet become Prime Minister.
Of course not.
It was a final year of John Major.
That's right.
But everything else, the Britpop, the Cool Britannia, people were sort of quite proud to fly the Union flags in a way that didn't mean it was racist or anything like that. And we had a very good football team. And also, in 96, you'd had a titanic struggle for the Premier League title between Manchester United and Newcastle, which was settled on the final day of the season. And that gripped everyone's attention. The changes from the Hillsborough report had come in, so the stadiums were no longer complete cesspits. They were quite a nice place where you could go and watch football.
Yeah, women went as well. It was quite amazing.
Yeah. It suddenly became a fashionable thing to do. And on top of that, you had, the Three Lions song, and you had
Des Lynam doing the
all that kind of thing, and it was just the most amazing stuff, topped off by this fantastic England performance in its first 30 years out from the 1966 World Cup.
What was? I mean, just give me the brief background of because we all think of him, but he was a decent player as well, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he was a very good player. He actually made the provisional squad for the 1966 World Cup. He was a midfielder.
Yeah.
Played for Chelsea. He's incredibly tactically astute. Even then, when he's playing under Tommy Docherty at Chelsea, and what used to enrage Docherty was that Terry would change tactics on the pitch, and he would suddenly say to Marvin Hinton, "Why don't you go and play sweeper? Why don't you push people forward?" He pushed John Hollins forward and things like that, and this enraged, but the players responded to it, and he was a very good player. And given all the problems that penalties were to cause him, he was a very good penalty taker. He took Chelsea's penalties.
Right, okay. And he was Terry Venables, London through and through, kind of thing. But he had that he had this charm and the appeal that everybody, because it would be very good to go, oh, he's just a soft southerner. But he had that appeal, didn't he, that people took to him. He was very, that he was kind of what you saw was what you get, and what you saw was really, really quite attractive.
That isn't. I don't think that's particularly true. Okay. I think he was a much harder man than he gave the impression of. Gordon Williams, who co-wrote Terry's books, the Hazel TV series that became on IT prime time on ITV in 78 and 79, and co-wrote a book called "They Used to Play on Grass: Predicting a Future Football," that looked very much like the Premier League. He said, the cheeky Cockney chappy persona that Venables had was an act. That he was a much more serious man, a much more thoughtful man than he gave the impression of, and that he had taken elocution lessons when he was a kid and dropped them for the Cockney banter and all that kind of thing. But I remember Dave Butler, who was his physio at England and Tottenham and everywhere he went. He said, the thing is, if Harry Redknapp, if you to meet Harry Redknapp now, Giles, the Harry Redknapp you would get is the Harry Redknapp you see on television. Yeah. He said, if Terry Venables, you spend an hour with Terry Venables, you might be surprised that he wasn't the gregarious, backslapping kind of Cockney that Harry is, but actually was much quieter and much more thoughtful and much more sensitive. But yeah, he did have the ability to promote optimism that everything's going to work out. We're not going to agonise over. Oh, he was a great tactician, but he never gave the impression he agonised over tactics. He sort of played it from the hip, and that kind of fitted in very well with the, with 1996 and Cool Britannia, where all these reruns of the Italian Job and Sean Connery's golfing. It was all that kind of coolness, and he radiated that.
In a world where we've got managers endlessly poring over data, and they just seem to live in football, and they're nothing but football, and their lives are nothing without football. You mentioned Hazel. Terry writes that. You mentioned. I met Terry in Scribes West of an evening, where he sang, obviously, and it was, but everybody was with him in that one. He came and he was doing the round the table thing. It was absolutely brilliant. He had interests outside of. You mentioned he had a great voice. He wasn't one of those guys where he goes, oh yeah, very good, because it's his club. He had a proper, he had a proper good singing voice. So he had so many different sort of aspects to his character, and that's what was an endearing thing as well.
Well, he did. I think he did 4 singles. I think most of which got into the top 50. It was more than just an affectation. He could have been. He started singing when he was 4 with a group called the Happy Tappers. They did tap dancing, and they wore little top hats, and they did all that kind of thing in and around Dagenham. And he could easily have become an all-round entertainer, much like Tommy Steele or Adam Faith, both of whom were friends of his, and he gravitated towards that kind of London environment around in Soho, in Denmark Street, where people like Adam Faith and did their stuff.
Yeah.
And he was genuinely interested in that. And he could have been, he could quite easily have presented Saturday night at the London Palladium if he wanted to.
Yeah, no, he would have been able to do that. And the other thing he did, and again, we're living in an international, managers are flying all over the world to train. He went to Barcelona. In what 80? When did he go to Barcelona?
84.
Right. This is Jurassic Park territory, isn't it? Basically, in terms of football management, because Barcelona, and Real Madrid. If you your football, but they are Spanish. They are the leviathans of Spanish football. It's it is the most politicized clubs in the world. Yeah. And he goes there from the UK and absolutely thrives.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, Giles, he didn't go from a major club. Yeah. He went from Queen's Park Rangers, who we all love.
We love Queen's Park Rangers,
but Queen's Park Rangers wouldn't have resonated in La Rambla. They wouldn't have resonated.
A Queen Park Ranger, Queen Park Ranger.
Yeah, it would be cool. Well, where's this Queen's Park?
Yeah.
But he went to Spain working for Ron Greenwood, who was England manager in the 1982 World Cup. Yeah. And he met Bobby Robson, who was designated to take over from Ron after the 82 World Cup. And they were talking about it, and Bobby said, I've been offered the Barcelona job. And he said, did you take it? And he said, no. He said, because I don't speak Spanish. Now, Terry thought this was a really weird reason not to take the Barcelona job. So after he got back, he bought himself a Teach Yourself Spanish book.
No.
And he did, yeah. And he taught himself Spanish. Now, the thing was that at the time, by 84, English clubs were totally dominant in Europe. We had won 6 of the last 7 European Cups. Yeah. So they were, just as, foreign managers are fashionable in the Premier League now, they wanted an English manager. And the choice was between Ron Atkinson and Terry Venables. And Venables got Bobby Robson's recommendation to the Barcelona board, and he got, much to his own astonishment. Now, Jim Gregory, who was the chairman of Queen's Park Rangers, he didn't even believe that Terry had gone for an interview. He just thought he was just, he said, Terry said to me, well, I've been invited to Barcelona for an interview. And he just started belly laughing. Yeah, off you go then. It's Barcelona, you better go. Yeah. And he didn't believe he'd been interviewed. He was absolutely astonished when Terry said, I've got the job. And he was he had a remarkable confidence about him when he got in. His first job really was to, well, as you know, Joe, was to replace Diego Maradona.
Yeah. Who was not happy and was having too much of a good time, shall we say, over in Barcelona. Yes. And the fact, we all see these things about, the players not having confidence in the manager, losing the dressing room. And that could have easily gone against it because it's the Catalans. And, Barcelona is the Catalans. And and I went to the Now camp to see the Clásico once, and I blown away by the experience. Yeah. Everybody should go and see it once. But then you realise, because they all say the motto is more than a club. And then you sit there and you go, oh, I get it now. It is more than it. And there's 300 away supporters, in the gods somewhere. And
Well, that is the one thing that really does surprise. It's certainly when Gary Lineker went out to play for Terry in 86. He scored a hat-trick against Real Madrid in the new camp. And then he said, Jorge Valdano got a goal back for Real Madrid. And what amazed Gary was it was a total silence. Yeah. It was a total silence that he thought the goal had been disallowed. What he didn't realise was that the Clásico made one of the biggest games in Spain, but it only really attracted then home supporters. Yeah. It was very rare for people from Madrid to go to Barcelona and vice versa. But the thing about what got Terry on side was he won all his games against Madrid in the new camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that is just the way the Classico goes, though. Because when you go to the Bernabeu, it's the same situation. Because Spain is such a. Here's an obvious statement, Tim. Spain is such a big country, so because Malaga got into the playoffs last night, brilliant. But if you're playing and you got to play Deportivo La Coruña, that's a 17-hour bus ride. That really, if you're an away fan, so that's probably the way it works.
It's like Southampton, Aberdeen.
Yeah, basically, yes. No, Southampton, Shetland. That'd be an interesting match. I like to see the Spires going up there. The England job, because we've only got sort of 10 minutes, and this is a moment. I mean, but just quick again, back to Barcelona. Lineker, he kind of gets it too, doesn't he? He's an intelligent man, Lineker.
Yeah. What Gary said, he said the thing about real top flight football is World Cup football or playing for Barcelona or Real Madrid. He said tactics are less important than man management. He said, because when I went to Barcelona, I knew what a good striker I was. I didn't need much coaching. What I needed was to be looked after, was to be encouraged, was to be... and he said Terry was absolutely amazing at that. He would take him out to lunch, he would talk tactics with him, but he would just jolly people along and give them confidence in themselves. And also Alan Shearer said his man management was the most significant part of why he's such a great success as England manager, because he got elite players to have confidence in themselves.
Also, he knew. I mean, you said before, as I got it fabulously wrong live on air, but he knew when to put the arm around the shoulder, because he's dealing with Gascoigne, for goodness sake, and this is before Gascoigne melts down, and but he's also he knows that he's got to control these people as well. It can't be there. He can't be Terry the woke, to use modern parlance. So he could,
he's definitely not woke. Giles. He's not woke. No, what he did, I say, with Gascoigne, he realised quite early on that sergeant major approach, giving him, shouting at him, threatening him, just wouldn't work. So he kind of gave him as much latitude as he could, knowing that generally at that time. Gaza usually produced on the pitch. Yeah. And if you gave him free rein, he would come together on on 3:00 on a Saturday or whatever. So that's what she's very good at. And some of Gascoigne's other managers didn't quite get that. They were always kind of, and that's why he wouldn't have worked with Alex Ferguson. Alex Ferguson would always say, he should have come to Manchester United in 1988. And no, he wouldn't have worked.
2 stars, yeah. But at the same time, and if you think, Gascoigne gets into, just 2 goals. I mean, the one everybody knows during '96, the Scotland goal, still artwork. But also the Spurs match, the semi-finals, where he absolutely drills that free kick. I mean, those, and then absolute genius. But then he goes to Lazio and he's got no control. Players going to, as Maradona at Naples. But unfortunately for Croc Gascoigne, of course, it doesn't work out, and he goes to Lazio, which has an interesting history as well.
We just have an interesting issue, and then there they tried to drill him, and make him, which didn't work. But the semi-final against Arsenal, that amazing free kick, he wasn't fit at all. Now the medical staff told Terry, you can probably get 30 minutes out of him, and so he was advised, well, what should we do? So most people have started Gascoigne on the bench and brought him on, if they were in trouble. But Terry said, look, we're playing Arsenal, who are about to become league champions. So they could win this game in 30 minutes. So he put him on for the first 30 minutes, in which he scored this amazing free kick.
I still remember it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you watch that free kick, they're all so far out, they're expecting him to sort of drive it into the box for a header. Yeah. Because all the centre halves come up, Gary Mabbutt comes up, and they're all waiting for it. And he just wallops it into the top corner.
Yeah, unbelievable. 96, that tournament. I mean, defining moments. Stuart Pearce's penalty against Spain. Yeah, this is before Spain sort of became world champions. The the emotion. I mean, this is the thing. That tournament was carried almost at the finishing line on a wave of emotion and a fear that there was no difference, there was no gap between the players and the fans, and the manager was that bridge in a way that an Alf Ramsey or a Don Revie or a Greenwood could ever possibly be. And I can see him now on the touchline, with his shirt sleeves rolled up, but in a natural way, not in a prime minister going around a hospital ward kind of way, because it was warm, and etched in the mind. I mean, and that is part of his tactical skill, but also, like you said, players can play the way that they want, and also he embodies that. He embodies his time, doesn't he? He embodied that '96 spirit.
And the spirit was that when they played Holland in that last group game, where they thrashed Holland 4-1, and it was revelatory because we weren't supposed to be the team that beat a team like Holland 4-1 and outplayed them and whatever. And they believed in themselves to such an extent that when they got to the semi, there were two players, Stuart Pearce and David Platt, who had played in the 1990 semi-final with Germany and the 96. And they both said the real difference between the two was in 1990, we didn't think we were as good as Germany. Yeah. In 1996, they expected to win. Yeah. And nearly did. Had Gazza times his runs fractionally better.
Let's not go there. Let's not go come. It's 30 years and whatever. The later career, because it's not just drop off at 96. So we've only got 5 minutes, so I shall leave the floor over to you about who you speak to, how you put it together, and also how you deal with Terry Venables' later years and the shock when he passes. I mean, it was really found.
I mean, he'd been ill for some time. He was afflicted, like Alf Ramsey, with Alzheimer's. His family were very protective. And his friends phoned him up, jollied him along, but he died. And, part of the impact was the shock that it engendered. Gary Lineker was, he said, deeply moved. Paul Gascoigne broke down in tears when he heard that Terry had gone. But his later career after Euro 96 was not a success. He could have had almost any job he wanted, but the long legal battle with Alan Sugar which he lost almost every count, had drained him financially, and he took jobs that were a bit unworthy of him, but which paid well. So there was becoming chairman of Portsmouth. There was managing Crystal Palace in the second division. There was a big offer to take over at Leeds, who were at the point of financial implosion. But he would always say, look, if you don't take a risk, you're not going to know. You're not going to make any memories. And he continued to sort of, do his songs and do his punditry, which he's extremely good at. But he, like a lot of people, when you sort of look at his careers and say, oh, it's a very poor choice of film. Why are they doing this? Why are they going from Shakespeare to doing a Marvel film and all that kind of thing? And it's because it's come along and because they need some money. Yeah. And because the England job didn't pay that well. Sure. Really. He was on about half of what Glenn Hoddle was. Glenn Hoddle was on 350,000. Terry was on 160,000. The legal fees for the battles with Sugar were enormous. And so it was, a bit like a taxi driver, a London cabbie. He did it on a cab rank basis, whatever came across. But it's a bit sad. But Gary Lineker said, at the end, he says, you've got to, despite that, he won La Liga with Barcelona. He won the FA Cup with Tottenham. He said he came very close to two absolute bangers, which were the European Championship and the European Cup with Barcelona, which he lost on penalties. And he said, you've got to compare him as an innovator with Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola. And I think that's the best tribute to Terry Venables that I can think of.
Gets no better than that. The book is called If I Can Dream, The Life of Terry Venables. It is by Tim Richards speaking today. Tim, if people want to follow you online, say nice things, where is the best place to find you?
Well, online, my Twitter handle is TimRich001.
The very own special agent.
Special agent, licensed to write.
Licensed to scribe. Licensed to scribe, there you go.
Yes.
Listeners, if you go to a Talk Radio Europe bookshop, you will see a picture of the great man himself on a great front cover. The book is called If I Can Dream, The Life of Terry Venables. Tim, I was looking forward to this interview. It's been better than I even thought. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Giles, and have a great time in Malaga.